And so moving on, we've got, well, we should probably recap on Normandy Invasion. And is he one of the top picks?
He is the top pick in the Super Screener. Absolutely number one, and as you'll see in the wagering recommendations, very solidly in that one and the second place slot.
And a big price at 12 to 1 if he stays that high.
That's what you gotta love, because even if you get other horses that are 8 or 9 to 1 in that on the board, this is gonna kick off a nice payment if he's up top.
Absolutely. And so now we'll talk about the morning line. So we move on to number 6. Is Milude is 15 to 1, and I happen to like Milude quite a bit, but Normandy Invasion at 12 to 1 and Milude at 15 to 1. That doesn't seem to quite make sense, does it?
Right. I think Milude's getting a lot of attention. Certainly has been working out tremendously here in Louisville, but also I think there's like Calvin Burrell, there's a big following for Rosie.
Yeah.
The problem is she was just on 60 Minutes. I don't think that hurt this horse's chances, and I think Mike Battaglia took that into consideration as the odds were being formed for this horse. But I was disappointed because I would have hoped for more value. And maybe by the time the race comes around, this one won't be 15 to 1.
You know, we were talking about this last night. I would peg him at about 22 to 1, 24 to 1. It's just a very deep field at the top, like you said. And so, all right, so tell us about Milude. He was one of the ones that kind of came through a lot of the criteria, right?
Well, if you look at the last 2 years, our Derby Dark Horse Went the Day Well last year, and that horse finished 4th at 30 to 1. Our Derby Dark Horse, our Super Screener Dark Horse for the Derby the year before was Animal Kingdom, 21 to 1 on top. This year it's Milude.
Wow.
And the reason for it, again, meets all the Super Screener criteria. People say, this horse is sort of it kind of gives up in the stretch. I think the blinkers exercise going into the Louisiana Derby really moved this horse forward. If you look at that speed rating, he was a 95, went to a 105. A dramatic, almost just got disqualified, but he maintained just a 10-point move. 11 points and he gets a big knock. But if you look at it, each of his 6 races, he's progressed forward. And this horse, as the trainer said when you interviewed him yesterday, slow learner. But he's learning each time because he's moving forward each time.
And he said he's really developing that killer instinct, in the stretch. And I know Revolutionary came back on him in the stretch, but in Louisiana Derby, but he was fighting every inch of the way. And so it seems like he's really learning, putting it all together.
And people think because of that Louisiana Derby, there's going to be a deep closer, and that's just not going to be the case. If you look at the rest of his races and the way he is, where he is comfortable, he's going to be mid-pack, and I think he gets first run on some of those deep closers. He also moves up in the mud, so I think that only helps this horse's chances. And I think Rosie, she does quite well on this track, and knows this horse well as she rode this one to its most dominating victory with a 10-length win.
All right, well, interesting horse. All right. So moving on, we've got number 7, Giant Finish at 50 to 1 in 30 seconds or less. Tell us what you can say about Giant Finish.
There are always horses that owners get Derby fever. The trainer didn't even show up for this one, so that tells you a little something. Completely and hopelessly overmatched.
Fair enough. A potential pace factor a little bit?
Yes, that helps. At least a little contributor to the pace. And he is, the only chance he's got is to send him, give the owners a thrill to see him maybe in the lead at the turn or something, and that's going to be about it.
Okay. So
he is the candidate to finish last place in the.
So as far as pace, we've got Oxbow going from the 2. He's in the 7. We'll go a little bit, and then we move on to the 8 horse, which is Golden Sense at 5 to 1.
5 to 1. I'd like a little bit higher. And he might float up a bit, I think, of these horses. Maybe more like 8 to 1, 9 to 1. California horses, for whatever reason, year after year here, do not get, I guess, their fair shake. And last year, keep in mind that out of the top 5 finishers, 3 were from California. That was a little different year last year. A lot of quality came out of California. But people weren't thinking that because, odds on those horses were, except for Bodemeister, were pretty high. So, Golden Sense, if you look at the running lines, they are very similar to Bodemeister's in his last 2 races, in fact. This horse has just knockout speed. The pace figures are not only supported by strong late pace figures, but those first call and second call numbers are extraordinary and meet the pace criteria. Not too many pace horses win the Derby. Last one was War Emblem, really, and before that we had a little, I think, Winning Colors. So it's been a long time in between Derbies when you have a pace horse that wins it. Track is going to be very key. Does move up in the slop. If it's favoring speed, watch out, because he's got the breakaway goodness. He could sit probably second like they've trained him, unless he gets a little back into his head and just starts going.
Mike, when I looked at this horse, I think Golden Sense plays a big part in the way the race is run, and I think the middle of the race is his. You know, he may sit back a little bit in the start, not to get so involved in the pace if Kevin can, but I think the middle of the race where his, you know, that kind of middle pace that he's got all down the back stretch, or when he decides to go, you know, potentially does he take the lead into the quarter pole and quite formidably, maybe a little bit like Bodemeister, not quite as breakaway, but does that sound right?
It fits the picture extremely well, because none of the other pace or pressers come even close to the types of figures this horse is capable of reeling off. And again, if those can be managed, then he's got a lot of energy left in the tank, and he can have one of those bursts. And I would imagine it would be around the quarter pole.
Well, you know, and I think what I'm thinking, you know, even on the backside at some point, or maybe it's going into the far turn, that if he puts a burst in, and you know, because if he's tracking Oxbow and Giant Finish, he could probably go by them when he wants to.
Right.
And so I thought the interesting thing here is, does he really force the hand a little bit of, you know, a horse like Verrazano or a horse like Orb, that they're sitting there tracking in 5th or 6th or 7th, they see Golden Sense going on with it, and it's time to go.
Yeah.
You don't want to get left in the dust. And so it just seems like that the middle of the race could really come in key with this horse.
I think the mid-pace race in the Derby will be the fastest in terms of relatively speaking for that part of the race. I think that'll be when they're running the fastest.
Okay. And so he's met all the criteria, right, for Super Screener? And
he's met all the criteria. He is number 2 behind Normandy Invasion. And with a race that's coming up on what I'd call not your most stellar pressers and pace horses, he's a standout among that group. Therefore, he has a lot of control over how that first part of the race goes.
Yeah, and not to beat up the Bodemeister example, but like you said, it's difficult for pace horses to win the Derby. We've seen Shackelford ran 4th, Bodemeister ran 2nd.
Artspun ran 2nd, yeah.
So it seems like, is that a big possibility here?
Well, you'll see in the wagering, you know, we do certainly have him on top, but he's much more centered in the 2nd and the 3 hole, only because typically there'll be some presser or pace horse that will end up in the top 4, and if I had to pick a candidate that would finish in the top 4 that are in that category, it's Golden Sense.
Okay, there you go. All right, so moving on, number 9, overanalyzed. Maybe that's what we just did. 15 to 1.
I've overanalyzed this horse too, I think.
Yep.
You know, it's interesting because there was a little clue lately where I kind of backed off this horse a little bit. The Palace Malice had gone out with this horse in the most recent work. And between the two, it was clear that Palace Malice seemed to have the better going. And that Overanalyzed was even doing that kind of that bob up and down. Didn't seem all that comfortable on the track. Wasn't horrible, but wasn't super comfortable. And it seems like he's that sneaky Pletcher bomber that can show up like Bluegrass Cat or Invisible Ink that hits that board that nobody talks about when he has multiple horses. This one is not one of those horses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that.
No. And Churchill Down surface, that Iroquois, you know, I thought, it's not like he excelled on that surface.
All right. So don't be too concerned about overanalyzed, but now we get to number 10, Palace Malice.
Yeah.
20 to 1 Pletcher.
Of those two, I'd have to say Revolutionary's number 1 in his barn right now for sure, but Palace Malice is moving up strong. The addition of blinkers, which he'll wear in the Derby, has been it looks like a good addition. He's a mid-pack runner, so again, he'll take the advantage of getting first run. He can run all day long. He's had also some horrible trips, including the Louisiana Derby. I like that Gomez jumps off to ride Bijek, but you get the calm, cool, collected Mike Smith.
Yeah.
I do like that for this type of horse that requires probably more patience. Okay. And while he's missed some super screener criteria, he's moving up. He's very sneaky.
Well, like I said, his races are a little interesting in that he had so much trouble in the Risen Star. And in the Bluegrass, he ran a good race, but it seemed like he just wasn't really handling the track that well. And so, that was a polytrack. So now we're back on dirt, and maybe we haven't seen the best of him this year.
Yeah.
That does make him interesting.
Yeah, I think he's another one, again, where if you're playing the Super, he's a nice 4th place horse.
Okay.
At much better odds than you're going to get here. He'll be
better than 20 to 1. Yeah, I think we're going to get 35 to 1 on Palace Malice. So, Okay, so now we go on to the Dubai Invader, number 11, Lines of Battle at 30-1.
Moves up if it's sloppy. I think certainly his breeding would help him there. I don't know if many people know this, but they are sending this horse. He's going to be on the pace, but it's going to be the American version of pace, which obviously a lot of European horses are not accustomed to, especially on the dirt.
Right.
There was even a question about running this horse in an upcoming turf race in England. So there wasn't even a certainty about making this trip. They did. But this is another one where, it's had one race since, I forgot, it was definitely been many, many months.
Okay.
So I think he's a toss.
See you in Derby, yeah. And,
eventually one of these will beat us, but I don't think it's going to be this one.
Okay, all right. So let's move on. So number 12, we've got It's My Lucky Day, 15-1. And here's another one. We talked to the trainer, Eddie Polisa, this morning, and gosh, this guy was confident. And, I don't know Eddie Polisa. I've been betting, for a while, and I think he's a pretty good trainer. But wow, the guy was really confident. He talked about how he engineered this 62-day layoff to get to the Derby, and he said it was the right thing for this horse. And so found that really interesting. It is pretty unorthodox to train that way.
Yeah, it was very interesting, and he's an unorthodox horse. I think we saw that at Gulfstream Park. My wife says, "Why do you keep tossing and turning?" And then you keep saying, "It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day." And I got to tell you, this one's giving me all kinds of fits because the Super Screener, much like in the Breeders' Cup, for example, Turbulent Descent violated 3 major Super Screener criteria for that race, that sprint race, and it was hard to take a big stand against that horse, and the horse finished 5th. This It's My Lucky Day has some of that same feel and look. Violates 3 very critical time-tested criteria, one of which is 3 descending speed ratings, that 111, 106, 92, or 90, or 94, and those are pretty big drops, very steep, going from race to race. Now, it's fortunate that the trainer did give them the proper rest, because when you hit those big tops, obviously that's very key. But it's not necessarily the way to come into the Derby. It looks good for the Preakness. But I don't think this is the way to come into the Derby. The other violator is big 10-point spread. He went from that, that 106 in the Holy Bull down to the 94. And the other is there haven't been any horses who have raced in March. Their last race was in March and didn't have a race in February. So a lot of time, again, another horse with 100 days and only has the 1 race. I just don't think he's going to be lightning fit. I wouldn't leave him off the bottom of tickets. I think he's a mid-packer for sure. Based on the quality of the rest of the field, but I know he's been training real well here. Yeah. This one, I wouldn't blame anybody for going against the Super Screener here, but this will be a real test of those 3 criteria.
And I think this is another one where I kind of think the middle of the race is key, because if It's My Lucky Day's right there at 4th or whoever he is, and he starts to make that move, he's going to say, welcome, meet Golden Sense. Golden Sense meet It's My Lucky Day, and I think if those 2 really tear it up, it could get a little bit faster than, they're both very good horses, and one of them may run the other one, out of the race.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, now we got a little easier one. Number 13 is Falling Sky at 50-1. I know traditionally the morning line maker doesn't go higher. I think I'll predict that this horse is going over at 100-1.
Yep, I think we'll be close to that, like 90-1, 100-1, something like that.
Okay.
Competes with Giant Finish for the last place finish. So if you have a throwdown bet with somebody, this is a good head-to-head wager. I think he'll be, again, pace factor along with Giant Finish. So it does help support a little bit more of a pace, but no need spending more time on it.
Well, I just did want to say from a pace standpoint, his only chance probably is to go. He's in the 13 hole. He's outside of a couple of the other speed, so that could help a little bit more.
Trainer is committed to that as well, so going on record is they're going. So.
All right, so now he brings us to number 14, Verrazano, 4-1.
I get no respect.
No respect. Undefeated.
This one is undefeated. Has 4 races, undefeated. Really has been kind of poo-pooed by the pros. And certainly has done nothing wrong, and certainly deserved favoritism if that's where it ends up. Doesn't appear to be. But again, there's a couple of concerns here. He is a presser type, and there are very strict presser kind of pace and speed rules, and he misses on those. So he's not literally at the top of the class on the presser within the presser pool. he has those tough to overcome thresholds too, where his numbers have decreased as he's gone up in distance. His margins have decreased. Now again, he could be any kind. It's very difficult to tell from the